So I finally managed to get my hands on this Corsair MP600 Pro LPX SSD, which is a brand new Gen 4 SSD from Corsair that is supposed to offer the best performance possible, both for a PC as well as the PlayStation 5. It is pretty similar to the MP600 Pro that has been out for a while, but it has a smaller heatsink, so it can actually fit into the PlayStation. And they also said that they have made some changes to improve the performance. So let's check out what that really means and if this is the high-end SSD that you should get. Let's begin. This video is brought to you by Seasonic and their Prime Series power supplies. These top quality power supplies are very efficient, they're whisper quiet, extremely reliable, and my go-to choice for most of my test rigs and builds around here. And to make the deal even sweeter, Seasonic wraps it all up in a cozy 12-year-long warranty. Check them out using the links in the description below. Now, looking at the specification sheet, this drive does look pretty good. It is a 3D TLC NAND SSD with added DRAM cache. It promises very high performance, and it includes support for hardware encryption, which is not something that you will find on a lot of high-end SSDs. The total bytes written and mean time between failure ratings look good, and more importantly, Corsair backs it all up with a 5-year-long warranty. Now, I'm specifically looking at the 2TB version that I'm testing today, but Corsair will sell these drives in capacities ranging from 500 GB all the way up to 4 TB, which is also a bit rare because many competing drives do not go over 2 TB. It is also a great looking SSD if that is what is important to you. It comes with a very sleek black heatsink that is pre-installed, so you don't really need to do anything other than install it into your system. But let's see how it performs. Now, as usual, I'm going to start with my PCMark 10 benchmarks, and the PCMark 10 quick test replicates all those simple little tasks that we do with our PCs on a daily basis that are not that heavy on the SSD. So those are the things like working with documents and photos, for example, but also loading games. So this is a great test for anyone that wants to add a second SSD to their system for those very simple tasks. And here, the MP600 Pro LPX comes in the 4th place in the same-ish area as the WD SN850 and the KC3000, which are pretty much the main competitors of this drive. That means that it is ahead of the majority of Gen 4 SSDs, but it is also behind the WD SN770. Now, the thing with the SN770 is that it does not include DRAM cache and it uses the host's memory buffer instead, so it also kind of benefits more from the fast 12900K DDR5 rig that I'm testing with. Still, the Corsair does look great in these light tasks, both in the overall performance and in the average latency. However, you don't really need, and you probably should not buy, a very expensive high-end Gen 4 SSD for these light tasks only, and you are way better off just looking at value-focused SSDs for that. But let's look at the full PCMark 10 suite, which is a bit more of an intense test that is meant to replicate more serious and more active use of your PC, as well as the drive itself. And this is usually a very good metric to look at if you plan to use this SSD as your main drive, for example, or to run some applications that are a bit more heavy on your SSD. And here, the Corsair continues to perform really well with the top 3 position and a very good overall score, landing once again in the same ballpark as the KC3000 and the SN850, with the FireCuda 530 and the Samsung 980 Pro not that far behind. But in the PCMark consistency test is where this drive really starts to shine. Now, this is a very extreme multi-hour long stress test that really pushes the drive to its limits. And here, the Corsair just holds up better than all the other drives I tested so far. Even the FireCuda 530 that was on the top for the longest time gets overtaken by Corsair, and then by a huge margin. It is also this sort of heavy testing where you can just clearly see that an SSD that is overbuilt and has multiple flash chips and a DRAM cache really does show its benefits over simple drives like the SN770. Now, I do find it a bit surprising that Corsair is mostly pushing this as a PlayStation 5 drive in all of its marketing, because in a PlayStation, the performance between different SSDs is generally very small and I would say quite insignificant in terms of game loading times. But in a proper high-end workstation, you can really benefit from an SSD that consistently performs this well under stress. And I really did think that this is a missed opportunity for Corsair to not push that angle a bit more. But if you are buying an SSD for your PlayStation, I really do recommend you do stick to drives that at least match Sony's spec requirements, which is that a drive needs to have a minimum read speed of 5500 megabytes per second. And if we look at the read speeds, this drive, as expected, does rank amongst the fastest in sequential read and write performance, and it would absolutely be a great choice for a PlayStation as well. Now, it is also important for a Gen 4 SSD to keep it cool, and even though the MP600 Pro LPX has a smaller heatsink than the original MP600 Pro, it is still more than big enough to deal with the heat it produces. So in the worst case scenario, which is writing a lot of data to the drive at once, it went up to about 60 degrees on the internal sensor on an open test bench without any airflow. But for the most part during testing, the SSD showed internal temperatures in the 50s with a surface temperature of around 45 degrees Celsius. So as long as you have even a tiny bit of airflow going over the SSD, you should be just fine and it won't throttle at all. So overall, it really does check all the boxes, and the only thing that you will have to consider is the price. And right now, it doesn't really look that good. So for this 2 terabyte drive, you'll have to set aside 390 euros here in the Netherlands, while the Samsung 980 Pro, the WD SN850, and the original MP600 Pro will cost you around 330, and that's a big difference. But you should also keep in mind that this drive just launched last week, and it is very common for SSDs to have a much higher price at launch before it settles down after a couple of weeks. And I really do expect that this drive will do the exact same thing, and hopefully it will end up costing about the same as its predecessor and about the same as most of its direct competitors, because this is a great drive that performs great on every single level, and it can be a very good option if the price can compete with the rest of the high-end segment. So like with everything, do make sure that you check all the prices in your region before buying anything. Now, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more, please do consider subscribing to this channel. And if you have any other suggestions or you want me to look at a certain SSD, please leave me a comment down below. I will do my best to check all of them. Bye guys, and see you in the next one.